Good evening, everyone. I'm Simon Warrender, founder and executive director of the annual Melbourne Prize. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this event takes place, the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past, present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Tonight's event is presented by the Wheeler Centre in partnership with the Melbourne Prize Trust. Can I start by thanking Erin, Carolyn, DM, Tamara, Jean, Daniel, and all at the Wheeler Centre for making this evening possible. To mark 20 years of the annual Melbourne Prize, we have a long-term and valued relationship with the Wheeler Centre, and it's organisations like this that really have kept the prize going for 2 decades. Tonight is the first time we've been able to bring together past prize recipients with a year's winner. Congratulations, Alexis. And thank you to this year's judges, Michael Williams, Christos Tsiolkas, and Evelyn Araloon, who have kept me on my toes from the beginning of the year, I can tell you. And to all our partners in literature, music, and urban sculpture, which is our 3-year cycle, many of whom have been with us for 2 decades. Briefly, the origins of the prize go back to the late 90s when I was with the Committee for Melbourne's Future Focus Group and conceived the idea for a CBD-based children's garden and centrepiece sculpture of the Magic Pudding, which you may know is in the Botanic Gardens and opened in 2000. After this project, I Googled London Prize, Paris Prize, Rome Prize, and Tokyo Prize to find there were no major arts awards named simply after a city. So I registered the name, the Melbourne Prize. And as they say, the rest is history. But I couldn't have done what I've done without the private and public sector support from the many organisations we have, but also the creative sector in literature and as well music and urban sculpture. We must continue to support and grow our creative sector, which is a vital part of a balanced and healthy society. Again, Erin and all your team, thank you so much for hosting tonight. I can't quite believe that this week we've had a number of wonderful events to mark 20 years of the annual Melbourne Prize. And thank you all for battling the Melbourne traffic and coming tonight. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I've got to adjust this. Simon. Thank you, Simon. Thank you to the Melbourne Prize. Thanks to everyone at the Wheeler Centre, particularly Erin, DM and Gab Ryan. And congratulations again to Alexis. It's such an honour to be here to piggyback on this event, on these 2 literary legends. I will not be long so that you can move on to the main event. I'm here just to read a poem to open things up. And I thought, this being the Melbourne Prize, us being in Melbourne, at the State Library, no less, that I would read a poem about Melbourne, and specifically a poem about a protest in Melbourne a few protests ago. Thank you all for being here. This poem is called Melbourne 1. The Elkid paint in Rothko's black on maroon series contains egg, damar resin. Under UV light, you should see the resins boil. They spring into fire, saying, "Be strong where you are strong." Face smushed on Myers Place, He saw the series again, instantaneously, across all frequencies, having floated 40 steps without touching ground. Now he makes out the structure of the stampede. Somewhere a burst mains because of how it sounds. Glazed heat on wet concrete. The city is one great throat. Its protest is joy. It chants its song through true choke, blue choke, breath with hemal fret. What the crowd wants, only the crowd can give, the crowd fears. He feels waves, fluid dynamics. I was just walking down Australia when the blue line cinched, he imagined saying. Cops on horseback, black helmeted, ballistic body armoured. I ran because everyone else was running, pushed because everyone else was pushing. Crushed into acrylic glass, iron go-downs, pushed down by big skips onto blue stone curb, thinking, that power pole was slanted. Those wheelie bins, backyard cricket, tasting concrete dust, metal dust, the Urdu poem, "Oh Lord, how beautiful must have been some of the faces trampled in the dust." Untravelling now, roads beneath this road, basalt, coaching road, gravel, cinder, dirt, remembering Rothko slashed his wrists, and beneath, the clay body, the winning. He was playing Tiggy in childhood streets when the cops digressed him, shunted him up close into hot mix asphalt, so photorealistic, full of scratch, warp, hiss, but also mica dots that outglinted even the glare, metallized, micro-prismed of their high-vis vests. And the wood-backed lacquer paintings his parents, whom he loved, used to love, inlaid with egg shell. The sudden gleam of fuchsia on that pigeon's neck, the hyoid bone floating in its bath of muscle. They knew, the police, the body was a problem they could always solve, a matter of flexural strength, resonance frequency. He thought feldspar too, quartz, all of it and all at once, resist nothing. But this was his only face, and fear began in him. Someone put their palm against his cheek, shook their head, which could have meant anything, not seeing he was now himself a high line, uninsulated, surging with raw current, thrilling to behold where he'd been all along. He's saying something, someone said, but they were wrong. He was past that, ungrounded, shaping to the shine sleeper held. Home. Nick and back fences out. One hand, one bounce. Cars out, garage walls out, over the fences out. And you have to get the ball. Roof. All the windows. Every part. And that means you. Of the bins, stumps, and out. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Simon, and thank you, Nam. I was in a theatre workshop today, and I said to people that I'm going to be here tonight, that Nam Lee is going to be doing a reading, and I'm going to be in a conversation with Alexis Wright. And I said, "How bloody lucky am I?" I meant it. I feel absolutely proud and humbled at the same time to be with you guys and be in a camaraderie that these two writers have showed me over the years. So thank you. And thank you, Simon, to the Melbourne Prize. I'll be just really quick to Evelyn Araluen said something really beautiful, I thought, about prizes. You know, because we can have a conversation about sometimes it's a crapshoot and, you know, should we be in competition because all of us work so hard on the work we want to do. But it is one way that we survive, really. The play I'm working on is about musicians and how do you sustain a career in an industry that can be quite venal and can be quite hard over decades. And I remember I was working part-time when I won the first prize. I won the book prize at the Melbourne Prize, and it was $10,000, and I just whooped at the freedom that gave me. So that's the importance of prizes as well. It's an acknowledgement of what we do, and it's a way for us to make a living. I'm really lucky. I have nothing to complain about in terms of surviving as a writer, but a lot of people are not in that position, and so that's anything you can do to support prizes wherever they occur is a positive, I think, in terms of the opportunity to have an artistic life. I'm Alexis Wright, and I'm going to read this bit so I get it right. The Melbourne Prize and its importance is it's about recognising a Victorian writer whose body of published work has made an outstanding contribution to Australian literature and to cultural and intellectual life. It was a hard award to judge, Alexis, because there were such terrific companions in that prize, but it was also an easy award to judge. That you fit that bill. Evelyn talked about it being a privilege for her life to read you. I have just had you in my head for the last week. I read Praiseworthy as soon as it came out. And what I did is I just, in the studio, sat down, put my phone away, didn't turn on the computer, sat down and read your book because I wanted to leap into it, because that's what I think I want to do with your writing always. The last week I've been listening to the audiobook. And my first question is, there is an amazing density of history about the big themes of our country and our world. What is colonisation? What is the catastrophe of climate we're facing? But there is also a magic for me about being in your words. And it reminded me of how much... So I'm reading you, and I'm reading something that is a specifically Indigenous Australian voice, but I'm also hearing Borges. I'm hearing Cervantes. I'm hearing Homer. I'm hearing the Bible. I'm hearing all these works, and they don't hang heavily. They are part of the magic of what your writing does. How? And I've never asked you this question. Sorry, I know. I'll shut up. I really want to understand it, because it's just phenomenally magical and breathtaking. Is what first led you to literature? What were the books that have inspired you?
Christos, let's see. I think I came from a background of story. That's what we come from, yeah. And that's very much part of who we are. I've listened to stories forever, from my family, from people I've worked with, from communities, in Northern Australia, Central Australia, and becomes in part of who you are, I think, and it's part of you're part of in the community, and but when I started to think about writing, I did read widely, and I talk about that quite a lot, and I wanted to try to understand, how do I write this country from my perspective, or the perspective that that I wanted to write it, and how I thought it needed to be written, and so I read widely of writers, and maybe I've gone too close, yeah, and across the world, and while I was doing that, and that was very early on, like I say, I come from a background of Aboriginal rights movements, Aboriginal land rights. They're big things that we were aiming towards and fighting for, and and that's in me too. You know, that fight and understanding what the challenges of what you have to do, and that's ingrained. And I needed not only to try to understand how to write, but try to find the right temperament for writing, because there was a lot of anger, and a lot that needed to be said, and how do you say it, and amongst everything else I wanted to say, and to grow to understand how to say it. But there were people like Seamus Heaney, I talk about Seamus Heaney, and he became. I needed a mentor. I had plenty of mentors in our own community, and but I needed a mentor for literature, you know, to write. And,
how do we do that?
How do we do that?
Yeah.
And what he taught me or gave me was that the quietness of mind. You know, to have, you know, to not be, you know, just, you know, full of fire, temper the fire a bit, and it's the, you know, I don't back away from it, but
Not at all.
not, but it's to do that work of literature and to put it out and put it out in a way that, you know, it'll stand up, and you'll find readers, you know, anywhere across the world, and that's what I've been trying to do. But with someone like Seamus Heaney, he was a mentor. I felt I would like to have, if I had a mentor, I wanted someone like Seamus Heaney or Carlos Fuentes or Gabriel Garcia Marquez and many others, and so I guess they all became, they mentored me in some way. I mean, the writers that I read, you know, they put, you know, from China, from, you know.
I don't have to look at it. It's in, because the question I had was about poetry, and but also the Latin American writers, I think, kind of. And I don't, when I say that I hear that, they are kind of there in your work, it's not imitative. I think what you do with language, and you know, hearing you talk and having heard you talk.
Probably not smart enough to imitate.
Oh, well, that's bull. I mean, that is actually a distinction that I think, and this, I'm not putting any. I think I do. I think I can do this, where that you're trying to write against a particular kind of, not like history, that rage that you talked about, or that anger. But I think sometimes that I can do. There's a heaviness to it. I am so, you know, as a fellow writer, but as a reader, impressed by the light that you don't wear those influences heavily, but I am conscious of it when I am reading your work. And one of the things I was thinking about this is just in preparation for this interview, and, you know, thinking about praiseworthy, there's a distinction of voice, right, in the novel, like in Cause Man Steel, in Dance, in Tomahawk, in Aboriginal sovereignty. But there's also the voices that are the earth, the animals, the we, right? The community that you talked about. And I want to ask you, that conversation or that relationship between the we and the I in your books, is that something that a writer like Seamus Heaney has helped you develop, or is that something that is coming from the oral traditions?
Well, I'm not too sure. I think that is probably, you know, from the oral traditions, really. When you talk about the we is everything, and we is not you and I, you know, or us as human beings. the we is the animal, everything that's in country, we're all related, and we're related to everything in country. So this is what I was trying to figure out, how to do this in literature. And it's been a long journey from when I started, and I think I made a decision really early on too, was that I couldn't write in a box,
Yeah.
I couldn't be constrained into what was considered Australian literature or English literature, and I didn't want to be there. And when something like Seamus Heaney said about himself as an Irish poet, and going through their troubles and that, that he had to sort of move away a bit, that that didn't want to write as if we all got to write from a common mind.
Yeah.
And to try to figure out some other way of doing what you want to do or you need to do, but to figure out how to write, as Carlos Fuentes talk about the all times, all times in, he said once, in all times in Mexico that are important, no time has ever been resolved, and that really struck a chord with me. And that's exactly right. That's what is happening here. That we come from the oldest living culture in the world, and all times are important. From the ancient times to the the colonial times. What's happened to us, and as we go into the future as well, it's all important. It's not resolved, and you can see that from the stories, the ancient sagas of this country, the law stories, and they've got a lot of meaning, and they come from somewhere. They come from something that might have happened, a long time ago, and that needed to be remembered, and so those stories have been passed down, and through time, and kept, because they're important to remember. And so those are some of the things I was thinking about in writing Praiseworthy. But it's been a long journey to come to where I've got with Praiseworthy. But that happened a long time ago, where I thought, I can't write in that box anyway.
Yeah.
I can't. And I didn't want to do it. I want to be able to challenge myself and to find my own way. I didn't want to meet other people's expectations.
Sorry.
No, but not Aboriginal mob expectations, because no one's put any expectations on me. But there's a general feeling, I think, through the publishing industry about what is proper, what is right, and that's not going to suit me, because I come from that background where it hasn't suited us to be colonised. It hasn't suited us to be assimilated, and hasn't suited us to to be invaded, and all that thing. That's what we do. That's what we do.
I mean, you've been doing that. I mean, you've been doing that for a long time, actually, Alexis. I just remember reading Carpentary, and then the Swan book, which I think I love that book. Kind of, the process of being able to go. I've talked often about. One of the battles I've had is to go, I don't want to write the English novel. That's not my history, and that's not what I want to do. I want to write the Australian novel. So what does that mean? And I'm talking as a white fella here. So that your writing is much more complicated, because there's a double meaning to what Australian means for you. I was really touched by that notion of quietude and the temperament of your writing. So what does it... Because there is that battle, right? Activism is about going and putting, out on the street.
Yeah, full speed.
What we do as writers is we have to go into the quiet. How did that negotiation happen, and did that take a long time?
Well, it has, and I talk about this now, you know, with praiseworthy, that, and particularly with praiseworthy. No, and there was an issue also for me with how I write Carpentaria, but with praiseworthy, yeah, I felt it had to be written in a different key, you know, an Aboriginal chord, and something that we say in the Gulf is we're of one heartbeat, you know, interconnected nations up there. There's a number of Wanyi, you know, Gungalita, you know, there's a whole group, you know, in the region, and we tried to do things together, Lardle and Keitel, and we say, and the way to bring all that together is we were of one heartbeat. And when I was working on Praiseworthy, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, what is that heartbeat? What is it? You know, what does that heartbeat sound like? And I thought about it just about everything in that book for a long time. And but to me, in the end, the heartbeat, you know, is that it's a slow heartbeat. It's a stillness of country, and it's a, you know, the repetitive, you know, the the sort of leveling, you know, of sound. It's high, not high, and it's not. And it's like you know, Yidaki or didgeridoo, that droning. It's that slow droning, and or clapsticks or women singing ceremony. So those sort of things I was listening to when I was writing Praiseworthy, as along with, you know, Dave Clark 5 singing, you know, and Glad all over. And
is music there for you when you're working in that way?
Yeah. I love music, and I have a real eclectic taste in music, from classical to Chinese Kujin music or raga and things like that. And so oud. And so I do listen to a lot of music, and I can work with music a lot, but sometimes it keeps me company. Yeah, otherwise it just becomes too quiet.
Yeah.
But
So it's a balance to find.
it's a balance, of having sound while I'm working, and that's I've thought about that. And that's what then I worked on Praiseworthy over and over and over to get that tone. It's consistent tone all the way through it, and not moving on until it felt right.
I was saying to a mate in the theatre group about you that for me you are like a writer and composer at the same time. Like that's how I see you, or that's how I read you.
Well, I'd love to have been a composer. Yeah.
I mean, so it's interesting actually when you say that, because I just don't have. I love music passionately. Like you have quite eclectic taste, but I'm not a musician. But sometimes I think about what it would be like to be a composer, and to be a composer with instruments. So you're not actually. We talked about what is the English language, to not be constricted by the tyranny of words in a way. Does that resonate with you in terms of?
Well, I actually love words, and
I love them too.
Yeah,
but
I love it. You know, I really love it, and I love the English language, and because that's what I write with, and I love using it, and perhaps we are composing music with words. It feels like that. It's a slow build, you know, of words, of shaping words, and you know. Yeah, and to make that sound right, and So maybe they're
Yeah.
the classical pieces of music.
So you've just given me a gift, actually. I'm going to think of myself as a composer, like just a low level, but I mean, you know, but I would
it's a
love,
different music.
It's exactly. Please don't get me wrong. I love words. This is why, you know, we do what we do. But I'm just, well, I was thinking, you know, I don't know if I've got it right, but did we first meet when we were both contributors to Tolerance, Prejudice and Fear, which was for Sydney Pen? And actually, one of the books I adore of yours is Tracker 2. Like, I'm thinking that would be a book I will return to again and again in terms of how you write biography and how you write it with fidelity to a truth, but also with a fidelity to something called imagination. I think it's... So I want to ask about, is there a space when you write non-fiction that is a different tempo in terms of how you work as a writer?
No, I think non-fiction is different. But with Tracker, I was really I felt it was really important to keep the way people speak, you know, keep faithful to that, and to you because to hear a number of those people speak, you want people to read it, but to be able to hear them.
Yeah.
To hear what they say, and the way that they speak. So and the humour there, and the seriousness of things, and yeah, it's. I work really hard on that too. You know yeah, for Tracker. You know that those stories and those voices are true to how, you know, I heard them. And I want that to be on the page as well. And it's good that you're talking to me about Tracker, because Tracker's coming out in the UK in a matter of weeks.
I think that, yeah.
Yeah, and
Congratulations.
No, it's incredible. But I have to do an interview next Tuesday. That's one of the last things I'm doing for the Guardian in the UK about Tracker. So. Good. You just remind me of another job I've got to do on the weekend.
We were talking. We were just talking about how much we're looking forward to quiet, right?
Yeah.
So to go back to what we do, which is something called writing. But I'm really glad to hear that, because, as I said, you know, that I think it's. I've been thinking. The question of how you write biography has been on my mind. I won't go into it, but why? But. Yeah, that's the book I'll return to. So to hear those voices, to do that job of faithfulness that you did, what was the process of hearing? Like, did you have to speak them out loud? Like,
No. Well, I had, you know, recordings. And so the transcripts, so I ensured that I'd listen to them again. Yeah, and to try and get the pause right, you know, where they pause, where they move, and when they stop, and just to me, you know, I can hear the voice, and I'm trying to get that on the page, in the right way, because if you don't, it's nothing.
I'm guessing I'm asking.
It's nothing.
Yeah. For me, part of that process, I mean, it is sometimes to actually. Even if I'm thinking of someone's voice, or I just speak it. I'm trying to become that character or that voice just for a moment, and that it's almost like that physical process gets me to the page. So I mean, but you just saying about the recording makes sense now. I'm going to go back to the book in a different way. To think about. Yeah, how you did that.
Yeah. Because to have heard some of those people speaking, particularly people like Tracker, and some of the other voices in the book. I mean, they're just incredible people to listen to, and anytime you'd want to listen to them, and but how do you put that on the page? And that was the you know the challenge there to get that. that faithfulness, of how they speak on the page, and not sort of correcting it into proper English or anything like that. There's some people when they read their own work and oh no, change it to proper English. No. But it's that's the richness of that book, I think.
Actually, I'm just thinking one of the, one of the hard. I mean, it was. I remember during the Melbourne Prize event, seeing you and Pio in the audience, and you talking about what is the voice, what is language, how do we speak, where do we speak from? That's a connection I see between you two as artists as well and as writers.
I love Pio.
Yeah. I think that is what you are both doing in your different ways. I mean, he's also a composer of, and I think he's also someone who loves the English language, but also battles with it. And I know you love it, I think, but there is also a battle that happens in order to write country, to write history, to write those pains, and to write climate change and climate catastrophe. So I guess I'm going to push you on the non-fiction. Like, is that where? Again, is it a different tempo? Is there a way of putting anger and rage in a form in non-fiction that's different to fiction?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about that. Yeah, it's I just I feel that you can say what you have to say, and or if I'm doing fiction, and you don't have to get so angry about it. Or you can be, you can be angry, but I also want the work to be read. And so it's a matter of finding ways of putting it across, and but the anger's there, but it's you don't. I'm not going to waste my time getting showing that how angry I am, and versus blood versus blood. I can do it in another way. I'm going to say what I'm going to say anyway, and it's going to be very clear. But you don't have to, jump up and down about it, and it's still there.
Yeah, it has a different. It has a different. I mean, that's. It may sound odd that I use the word lightness, but that's what I felt reading Praiseworthy. What I felt reading the Swan book, as well. Like kind of because there's something about the music of the language that, and it's like there is anger in some of the music I love, whether you're talking about classical music or forms of popular music, but there's also exhilaration. Yeah. They find the best musicians find a way of making that anger exhilarating and not destructive, and I think that's what lightness means to me in your.
Yeah, well, I learned a lot from Italo Calvino, and he's someone that I really, really love. His work, but in his last book, which was 6 Memos for the New Millennium, where he got to write 5, but one of those essays was on lightness, and that's a really important essay. It's a really important little book for anyone who's writing, I think, to read. And but the essay on lightness is superb. It's he talks about the shaman, carrying the load of responsibility, but carrying it lightly as he moves from one place to another. And while he's figuring out how to resolve some of the issues that he's got the responsibility to try to find answers for, and Calvino, he talks about he learned that, from the way shamans work, in other cultures, and that's also how I see, how some of our people, our senior people, wisdom people of law, they don't move and jump around, and they understand very clearly, what's happening in the world, and the power of the law that they have responsibility for, and for looking after. They understand all these things, but they carry that in a light way, because it's a long road. We're on a long road. We're not, and this was something I, had to learn when I was very young, that no, you're not going to get everything resolved in a day. Why couldn't it get resolved in a day? Anyone can fix all these issues, that, that are burdening us, that we've got to deal with. And it's the same in the world at the moment. These things you think could be fixed in a moment, but we're on a long road, and we've got to be up for it, and to last the distance, we've got to be there, and that's, you think about that, when you're writing as well, that it is a long, the books that we do.
Yeah.
It's a long road, and the big tasks that we take on, big responsibilities, and yeah, we've got to be up for it, so we can last the distance. and that perfectly, and all the work that you've done, and theatre work, your fiction, and
Yeah, my friend.
I'd like to ask you how you wrote Dead Europe, actually.
I mean, that actually, I think I went through a period of really big self-doubt. I don't, and then, the oral tradition I had was the peasant stories from my parents and their generation, and I think I learned to kind of try as hard as I could to fall away from fashion, because fashion is part of what happens in the world we're in, and actually go, what is really important to me? Closest I've ever been to going, I'm not going to be a writer. I've loved this. I've loved words since I'm so small, Alexis, but I don't think I can do this. And then I thought about the stories my father told me about the village, and my father, who was, he did not have the opportunity of education, but he was one of the great storytellers that and he, that book emerged from me going, I'm going to listen to those stories and think about those stories, and politics, because politics has been important to us. It's part of the struggles we're involved in, right? And I was a communist in a family that was both communist and anti-communist. My mum's side was left-wing, my dad's side was right-wing, and they both had experiences of the Civil War that were horrific. That's civil war. Yeah. So, and I was very lucky to be travelling in Europe as a young person when something called communism was dissolving, and so that's how I wrote. I had to deal with a loss of faith in something called politics, and that's where it came from. So, quietude, you're absolutely right. It's about going into quiet, isn't it? It took me 7 years, and that's the most important thing, was to go give it time, give what we do time, and you can tell that when I read your work that you have given it time, right? It's a hard lesson to learn, I think.
It is a hard lesson to learn, and well, I normally work while I'm doing. I've got a job to do, as well as writing, writing is a second thing a lot of times because you're so busy with doing other work that you're doing. And but I've always, tried to see the some value out of everything you do, and you're trying to do it well. But and I just felt that it's good to give the book the time that was necessary, and the more time that you can put into it, the better.
Yeah.
Because you can resolve a whole lot of things, and new thoughts will come to you, and new ideas, and you can work it through. But you can't do that if you just rush something. And so, yes, that book took a long time. And my publisher, Ivor, he was waiting, for about 2 or 3 years, longer than what he thought he'd have to wait. And I think he's just about given up on me.
You and I have been very lucky with our publishers, I think.
Yeah, you too. Yeah.
Because they have been, we were saying in the green room, loyalty sometimes is, I think loyalty is sometimes not given a space in the industry we're involved in. But you have been really loyal to Giramondo and vice versa, and I think I'm not surprised that they gave you the space.
Yeah, well, I've learnt lessons in my life,
Yeah.
and in the work I've done in with our own organisations, and that you trust what you know, and or you trust the devil, He's not a devil. He's not a devil. Yeah.
Okay,
No. He's not a devil. He's a really good person, Ivor, and I'm very lucky. I think he's one of the best publishers in the world, really. And I say that all the time. He gets very embarrassed about that, and probably I shouldn't say it, but
Jane Palfreyman's the same with me.
yeah. And it's good to have that relationship and that trust in the relationship. With your books, because I don't talk to anyone about a work that I'm doing.
Oh, really?
No, I never.
Yeah.
And never talk to anyone about it. Basically, it goes way back, and to Carpentaria, I think. And before that, Plains of Promise is, I think, the third chapter of Plains of Promise. I think the first few lines, I actually read them to my husband, and he didn't understand it. He didn't understand it, and I said, you're supposed to be a smart man, and
I'm going to use that against you.
And so we both agreed that he would not, I would not talk to him about my work, and he would never ask, and that's good, and he gets on what he's doing, and I get on with what I'm doing, and but I don't talk to anyone else either, and basically because when I'm working on a book, I'm arguing with myself all the time. I know I'm taking risks, and sometimes big risks that might mean something may never get published, and like Carpentaria nearly never did, and Praiseworthy is this huge book, and Swan book too is different, and gee, but no, I don't talk to anyone about it because I'm really and truly having arguments with myself all the time about everything, and if it's worthwhile doing, and pushing myself, and I don't want to have those arguments with anyone else, because or anyone else having an argument with me, which is to me is irrelevant, and I need to sort those things out myself. So I just do it myself, and then I got a lot of friends who are not writers, and I don't want to talk to. They don't want to hear about what I'm writing about anyway. They just sort of think you can knock that up on the weekend. And it's, so yeah. So no.
I've got to ask, because you brought up Tolly. I mean, for the audience to understand, I mean, one of the lovely things about our friendship, Alexis, is that Wayne and Tolly, my partner and Alexis' husband, worked together for years, and I really love that we. Yeah, because I mean, this will be I feel so grateful to. I mean, Wayne reads my stuff only after the first draft. You know, I've got to do that argument that you're talking about before I can give it to Wayne. But in different ways, that support's been incredible, hasn't it, in terms of sustaining something called the writing life for us?
Yes.
Do you want to talk to that?
Well, he's a very good person, very, very good person, and we talk about a whole lot of things. You know, he's probably part of the reason why I am, you know, more grounded. You know, and I'd say people give me that grounding, but also he's a good, logical, rational person. It's a good combination.
It is a really good combination.
And he's good. I can depend on him for anything. And he's really pleased with everything I do. And but I don't think he's ever read Carpentaria.
Really?
Or the Swan Book, or Praiseworthy. He reads the reviews.
Yeah, I never Google myself. There lies hell. Is that? But Wayne has. Yeah, Wayne does that for me. I think. Look, I haven't. I cannot tell you. I imagine most of you in this room have read Alexis's work. I think it was an honour to be part of the judging panel to bestow the award on you, Alexis. An absolute honour. I think your work is stupendous, and the thoughtfulness, the bravery, the imagination of it. It has been such a delight to be lost in your words again this week, and it's such a delight to share this space with you. I want to give you a big round of applause, because you so deserve it. Thank you. There will be Alexis is going to sign books for you. Thank you so much. Thanks, as Simon said, thanks for coming in the heat and in the traffic. But this writer is so worth it. And thank you to Nan.
Thank you, Nan. Thank you, and thank you, Christos. You've been a good friend of mine for a really long time, and I know that it would have been difficult. The judging of the Melbourne Prize, but because they're all exciting and fantastic people, but I'm very grateful to you and Evelyn and Michael Williams. I think so highly of you guys in any time, and. Regardless if it was, whatever happened. But we've been friends for such a long time, and we don't see each other much, but we do. When we do, we love seeing each other, and we love goats.
Yeah, we
love goats.
We love goats. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.